All right, welcome back to College Football Addiction. A big one this week for Michigan. We're going to talk with Seth Fisher, editor of IMGO blog. Seth, how you doing, man?
I'm doing mostly okay. I mean, we got a little, we got knocked down a peg by Texas, but that's a pretty good team. So, trophy go Burr, as they say, right? Like you win a national championship, you get to just feel good for a while, and this one's probably going to last a good long time.
Yeah, you build up some equity when you win big. You understand that coaching changes, and well, let me ask you that. That's a good place to
Yeah,
start. Coaching changes, a lot of roster turnover.
yeah.
Certainly, replacing a really good a really good college quarterback. But Michigan fans are wild, right? Like as are any blue blood fan base. But do they somewhat like what's the mood truly like? Are they okay with it because of last year, or are they still just as adamant of like, no, we got to win every game ever?
Oh, there's still definitely a sense of like trophy go Burr, right? Like it's just everyone we had this moment because the thing is when you're going through bad times and we went through some bad times together. When you're going through those kinds of times, you like think to yourself, "Man, this is never going to happen for me," right? Like we started talking about how the economics of college football just favor the schools that are just going to cheat as much as possible and throw as much money as possible and do all the things that we won't do because we're Michigan. Right? Everyone's got their own fan stupidity, right? Their own narrative. And when you finally win, it's like we don't need to have those narratives anymore. Your narrative now becomes we did it right. This was good. And that team was one it's one of those rare times in sports where the team really was worth it. Like they had to come up with a cheating scandal, which every single team does, and it was kind of like the weakest cheating scandal in the history of cheating scandals. But like we knew, and we knew how good these guys were. We knew how good these people were as people, and it was like such a team worth celebrating. And the fact that we got to do it together, there's just no replacing that. Because every time like there's a bad moment, we're just like, well, this was what we did. We mortgaged everything to win that championship, right? We went into this season not having a head coach, so we couldn't recruit a quarterback in the portal because in December we were preparing for a Big Ten championship. You talk to a quarterback at that moment, and he's like, "All right, who's my head coach going to be? I don't know. Who's my coordinator going to be? I don't know. Who's my QB coach going to be? We don't know." He could be in the NFL. We could be Jim Harbaugh. Could be the people right now. The only thing we could guess is Sharon Moore is probably going to be here. But if Jim Harbaugh stuck around, maybe Sharon Moore was going to take a head coaching job somewhere else. So we didn't know. And there was this like, okay, we know what we're doing. We're going into this season. This is a peak roster year. We need to do it now, and then next year it's going to handle itself. And this is what happens in college football when you say next year will handle itself. It's not a peak roster year, and they have some major holes.
So coming out of that Texas game, obviously, like you said, Texas is really, really good. So I don't know if that was more about Michigan, more about Texas, but heading into USC, a pretty big change at the top. What's the mood around the switch at QB?
Well, it's kind of a switch back because all offseason was going to be Alex Orji. And we're trying to figure out what happened because the coaches won't tell us anything.
Sure.
We're guessing that what happened here is they realized they didn't really have a quarterback. Um, they have a recruit, Jaden Davis, who they cannot play yet. He's a true freshman, and I think part of the deal was he's not going to play this year. Even if he has the goods, he's not playing this year. So they haven't been able to recruit a quarterback for a while, and this was coming down the pipeline. So they have a guy who can run, and they could design an offense for the guy who can run. And he's a tank, right? He's like a Tim Tebow kind of guy. So I think what happened is the coaches who were set up for last year, right? This coaching staff was built to run the ball with Blake Corum and a great offensive line, and throw the ball with J.J. McCarthy, who was a way better quarterback. People are finally realizing it. Way better quarterback than anyone realized. His stats weren't there because he never had to throw a pass in the fourth quarter. But first quarter through third quarter, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. His stats are right up there with Jaden Daniels. And so it was a big come down from having one of the best in the history of the program, maybe the best quarterback in our history of our program, to having a guy who can, maybe not that accurate. We don't know how he can read well. The passing concepts they've used with him are pretty simple, but he's a tank. He's got something. They just didn't know how to coach him, I think. So I think that they looked at their team and they go, are we going to commit to this 100%, go into the season, and never be able to recruit a quarterback or receiver again because we're just the running team now? Or are we going to go with the best guy who fits the offense that we ran last year? And I think that that's what they decided. I think they decided it late, and now they're going back to the other guy because they tried with Davis Warren, and that's not a knock on Davis Warren as a person. He's been through, the guy had leukemia and came back and played football. Um, but I think that he threw 3 picks against a team that you cannot throw 3 picks against.
Yeah.
And you can't have, if you're the game manager and that's his ceiling, then you can't be the guy who also throws 3 picks. You can
Yeah.
be J.J. McCarthy and throw 3 picks and get away with it because you're also going to throw 3 touchdowns that are just as incredible and have the same EPA response in the numbers. You can't be that guy. So now they're going to try this. My guess is it's going to be, probably just as effective as the other thing, or maybe slightly more effective, just different. But they're going to try it, and I don't know that anyone on the staff actually knows how to coach him. So I don't think they're going to be that interesting, and I think it's just going to kind of fart along this year.
So USC comes to town this weekend, and interestingly enough, although this feels like a Rose Bowl from days gone past, a Big Ten game, USC's first Big Ten game. USC already got over one big test in LSU. Now, I don't really know how good LSU is. I know they got a lot of talent, but they didn't look great against a very inferior opponent. They needed some officiating and a huge comeback.
And I'm glad someone else thought that.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, they are getting teleported to
every
this
call
thing right now.
But they got it done, down 3 scores against South Carolina. Like they did get it done. They got some assistance for sure. But so I don't know truly how big that win was, but I do know that USC beat a very talented LSU team at the very least, right? And an LSU team that has really good trenches. I really like LSU's offensive line. But I do wonder, even in a year that Michigan's probably down, or certainly down, from last year, I wonder how USC stacks up, in the lines of scrimmage. I certainly don't think USC is just your average, Pac-12 team when it comes to lines of scrimmage. They recruit well enough there, but I don't know if they're your upper level Big Ten team when it comes to that. And games are certainly won there. Now, I think Michigan's trenches held up okay early against Texas, but then just not being able to do anything offensively eventually kind of wore them down. And that's why Texas kind of extended out and ended up driving on them pretty well. So thoughts on how Michigan will match up there up front against USC?
All right, so defensively, Michigan can match up with them. That's really going to be the battle. Is USC's offense. Lincoln Riley knows how to run an offense. We know this, right? And I think the difference when I looked at the tape for Texas, there were 2 main things that were standing out because Michigan had the same kind of performance they've had against most elite offenses. It wasn't up to the same par as it was against Washington last year, but that was just super high. Every other time they faced an elite offense, it looked kind of like what happened against Texas. The differences were they were starting on their average starting position was the 48-yard line. So if the offense is turning it over and giving them the ball in Michigan territory, it's going to be easier for USC to score, obviously. The other thing is they couldn't get off the field on 3rd down. I think that we had some we had some young coordinators who took what Wink Martindale created on the Baltimore Ravens and adapted it well to college. And Wink Martindale comes in, and it was the question. You got an older guy. He's had success in the NFL. He likes to blitz. He has this personality. Can he transition himself to being a college coordinator, or is he just here to kind of, put his stamp on the Michigan defense and ride this talent because the talent level is incredible on this defense? And I think that we saw at Texas that it's not going to work if Wink Martindale is going to just be regular Wink. He has to adapt to college. Now, that was game 2, and it was a big ask to say, come to college for the first time in 20 years, take over a defense, and come up with a great plan for Texas in week 2. USC is another elite offense. The big thing that scared me with Texas, the moment I was like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. And our offense is terrible, and their defense is fine. But what really scared me was our defensive line is the reason why Michigan's been able to get away. Michigan is able to play one man down in the box, and they did this against Washington. They did this against Ohio State. They did this against elite offenses. Play one man down the box because their defensive tackles are so good, the defensive ends are so good. There's nobody on that front you can't double team. You're going to lose one of those blocks. And if you lose 2 blocks, you get sacked or you have to bail out of the pocket. Wink Martindale wasn't even using that formula against Texas, and when he's used it, it looks fine. Mason Graham is probably the best defensive tackle in college football. Kenneth Grant is probably top 2 or 3. Maybe the next one after Graham. And when you have that, like Texas had last year, you can go really far as a program. So I think USC is going to. The big question is, can they block them up like Texas did? Texas lasted longer than anyone I've ever seen against this defensive line. They were able to stop Derek Moore. They were able to stop Josiah Stewart. Not every time, but enough times that you only get 1 pressure per play and not 1.5 or 2 pressures per play. Because once the second guy breaks through, your play is dead.
So USC comes in as, I think, 5.5 point favorite right now. Nothing crazy, but that'd be over a touchdown, I guess, on a neutral site field. Is there a confidence that Michigan can get this done, keep it close? Like what is the confidence around how this game will end up turning out?
I don't think we're that confident. I think that USC's fixed their major problem, which was defense. And the question is, how much have they fixed? Because Michigan's going to have this new offense that they haven't been able to scout. I don't think Michigan's offense is going to be particularly interesting. I think that if you had an offense that Michigan practiced all offseason and was going to, and had some things planned for this game, then this would be a really tough matchup for USC. They got a lot of transfers out there. They have a new defensive coordinator. They're trying a new system. And then Michigan's going to be a new kind of test, right? They haven't tried it against this kind of offense. But I think that Michigan doesn't really have the coaching to be that kind of threat. They just switched quarterbacks. This is going to be their first start with Alex Orji. They scrapped this offense, and they were practicing something else for the last few weeks. So they didn't get the 3 weeks practice to get good at it. So I think Michigan kind of hurt themselves for this game. And that's one of the storylines of this season. Michigan last year, Michigan in 2022, and to a degree in 2021, they didn't really have a major opponent until like the middle of the Big Ten season, right? You'd get like Penn State in early November. And this year, you get Texas in week 2. You have USC in week 4. You have these major. You have Oregon coming up. Michigan State's coming to Michigan State's a rival, but not a really good team. But you have, Indiana looks better this year. Illinois looks better this year. There are no breaks in the schedule, and Ohio State's still at the end of it. I don't think any Michigan team has played a schedule like this since the 90s. And maybe no FBS team has played a schedule like this. Maybe like one of the SEC teams. At least a contender, because contenders still have to play themselves.
Right.
I'm sure there's a Mississippi State that just got a hellish schedule a couple times and no one cared because they went 3-9. But it's just a brutal schedule. Every single week is another team, so it's kind of hard to maximize. And if they're going to maximize for anybody, they're going to do it for Ohio State. So I don't know how much Michigan's going to be able to bring to this game. I think that this is going to be I don't know how well USC's defense has kind of figured out how to deal with something new. It's going to be a very interesting matchup. But the most interesting thing is going to be that first snap against Michigan's defensive line. Can USC's offensive line hold up? They got a couple guys who are pretty good. Elijah Page, that left tackle, he's pretty good. The transfer from Wyoming is held up pretty well, Emmanuel Pregno. So the left side looks okay. I think the rest of their offensive line is a little bit iffy, especially at center, and that's not where you want to be iffy if you're going to be a team that's trying to stop, the best 2 defensive tackles in the country. If they're getting sliced through like butter, it could just be a 12-11 push fest. It's probably not going to be that. It's probably USC's probably going to get the ball down the field because they got a quarterback. Miller Moss has really shown out this year, and that's what it takes. Got a quarterback and some big receivers, and you can make some plays when you need them.
Should be interesting, man. Look forward to seeing it this weekend. Where can folks follow you and find more of your work, Seth?
Just go to mgoblog.com. We also have a yearbook that's celebrating the last 3 years because you can't tell the story without Aiden Hutchinson. So you can find that at mgoblog/victors. I'll have that in people's hands by October when you're probably really going to want it because Michigan's going to take some L's this year. And then I'm on Twitter at @mesopagon, which is my old, we used to all have internet names. So
Yeah.
it means beard hater.
I like it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, man. I appreciate you as always, and good luck this weekend.
Thank you, TJ. Congratulations on making this whole interview without talking about FSU.
Way to sneak that in. So good stuff.
Oh, man.